Hello
Hi.
and welcome back to the Health and Harmony Goals podcast. Today we have another incredible guest on, Lisa from LifeTrain. And it's actually so crazy because we went to school together. Well, you were in my school for a short while. I think it was how many years? I don't know. You can tell me when you introduce yourself. And then we also landed up crossing paths again when we competed and dressed up as the same flower as well. That was so funny. And now we're also on such similar paths in like the coaching industry. So I think it's so interesting how our lives are so similar and have crossed in so many ways. And now we have you on our podcast. So welcome to the podcast. Go ahead and introduce yourself so all our listeners know exactly who you are.
Rox, it's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me, Rox and V. And congrats on this amazing podcast. Thank you so much for creating the space for incredible women to share their medicine and their gifts.
That's amazing.
So as Roxy happened to mention, my name is Lisa LifeTrain. And it's an interesting thing whenever someone asks you to introduce yourself, because it's kind of like we attach ourselves to these labels, and it's like these labels give us such an identity. And it's very interesting because whenever I hold a ceremony and people have never partaken and shared a ceremony space with me, I always say to them, my name's Lisa, and I simply am just a sharer of love. Because for me, I truly believe that these labels that we give ourselves are irrelevant, right? It's like people can feel our essence and who it is that we are through the frequency that we transmit to others. So my name is Lisa LifeTrain, and what I do for a living is I create spaces in which people can deeply connect to and understand themselves through their body, their mind, their hearts, and their spirits. So essentially what I do is I create magical experiences for people to play, for people to unravel, for people to have a deeper understanding of their magic and their magnificence in fun and creative ways. And Rox, it's so interesting, as you say, that we've walk these beautiful, very similar journeys. And it's been such an interesting thing for me to witness you in your growth. First of all, I just want to say thank you for stepping into your power and your truth. And it's such a beautiful thing. You're such a big teacher for me, because so often I see how you're so on it. You're like launching this and doing this, and your beautiful moon calendar, literally 3 months ago, I was like, I want to do a beautiful calendar for next year and share with people how to work with all their different cycles. And then boom, there she goes. She's got it, she's done it. So it's so beautiful to understand that there's no such thing as competition, right? But you have to work through that within yourself first. So every time I see you do something on social media and it triggers my deep sense of, not being on it or not performing as to where I think I should perform, it's so beautiful for me to see you as such a mirror. So we've walked such a big journey, you and I, and we were both pro tiers in this bodybuilding competition.
I saw the pictures of that.
So fun.
So cute.
So cute. And it was so interesting because even when I reflect back, because sometimes we go into comparison, right? It's like, she's so amazing, she's so good. What does she have that I don't have, that she's able to create all of this content and do all these things? But when I've reflected back on it, it's been such an incredible experience, because even in that bodybuilding competition, which was very much about our outward appearance, we both showed up in such a beautiful, individualistic, unique way. And that's what's so beautiful about this, is that, there's space for all of us in this environment. So thank you to you for being such a big teacher to me. And V, thank you to you for being part of this.
Thank you, girl. That's incredible. I think it's so funny because just like you say, I was triggering you. I felt the same about you. And I think it's so incredible that I think I'm seeing it on such a collective where people are starting to feel safe enough to be vulnerable about these things. Like before, obviously with the hustle mentality and being mostly dominated by our ego, like we do view everyone else as competition, and it just lands up creating such a feeling of like isolation and solitude, because we separate ourselves from people because we constantly, I don't know, almost trying to be better than them and feel like we need to achieve this in order to be like that person. And I just think it's so interesting how that's starting to shift, where we can like welcome people in and actually share people who do similar things to us without feeling threatened, without feeling like that person is competition to them. So thank you as well for teaching me that, because I think it's such an important thing for women to start supporting each other instead of almost not. I don't know what the opposite word would be.
I was going to say, like, I love that you spoke about that, because we've spoken about it so many times in previous podcasts where we always speak about like looking at someone as a mirror, and you literally just use that example with you and Rox, because sometimes someone can trigger you and things someone does or what you're not doing can be a trigger for you. But the fact that you're able to sit back and be like, what is it that's triggering me about myself? Because it's not that person that's triggering me. It's something that's deep rooted within myself. So the fact that you can do that and also bounce off of each other, and like Rox said, to take away from that mentality that you have to be separate from someone and isolate yourself so that you can be better than them, where now we can come as a community and grow together, and people can feed off of each other, and we can be doing the same things but thriving together and having different experiences with different clients or different people, whatever it is. I mean, I've always said my job is different to what you guys do, but I also have competition in my industry, and you, no matter how good you are, how bad you are always going to have people that do the same thing as you. You're just going to have different clients that are attracted to either you as a person or someone else as a person. So I think the sooner people realize that, the less competition we have, and then we can, like you guys are doing, grow together.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so you were saying how you create spaces for people to experience whatever they experience when they come to you. And I wanted to touch on, I mean, you don't have to go into too much detail, but if you want to touch on like some of the experiences or some of the ceremonies or what you do to help people through these experiences. Like I know I've seen you do cacao ceremonies. What are some of the other things that people do when they come and see you?
Beautiful, amazing. So I work with people differently. So whether that's one-on-one or whether that's in a group experience, groups are definitely my favorite, because I just love sitting in a space where everybody's stuff gets to be put into this beautiful container, you know, to be held and changed and transmuted. It's really beautiful. From a one-on-one perspective, I started my journey 12 years ago with studying Reiki. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing a lot of energy healing for some years. So my one-on-one experience is essentially a one-on-one ceremony where I work with cacao, psilocybin, magic mushrooms, where I will open up beautiful sacred space. And I got headhunted a couple of years ago to start Australia's first one-on-one assisted stretching studio. So I created this program with an integrated physician and a chiro and with my yoga background. So I lie people on their backs and I create this beautiful space for them to go really deep into their body. And essentially the body is incredible because the body is divine intelligence. There is nothing that we need to do to make the body heal. Mm-hmm. If we can get ourselves into such a deep state of relaxation and trust, the body does what it needs to do. So essentially through the stretching, what I do is I open the body up. And then whilst I'm doing that, so we all have beautiful gifts, right? And we can tap into these gifts at any given time. I have always wished that I could see things, but I can't. That's never been my gift. And like when people say, I ran a circle at my house and there were all these people in my garden and they were like, oh, have you seen what's in your garden? There's like rainbows and unicorns and fairies. And I was like, you guys are crazy. Like, what are you talking about? But the thing that I have been gifted with in this lifetime is my ability to feel where people hold trauma in their body. So what happens is my body becomes a mirror for their trauma, and I can pick up and tap into where they hold their trauma. And then essentially what happens is I get these messages of these memories that come in a sense of inner knowing. So it's like I'll see the vision of something that happened to them around whatever age it happened. And as I'm opening the body up, this information is starting to be released. And essentially all we need to do in order for the integration or the healing to take place is the recognition of the pattern, is for our consciousness to witness and see where we are holding that blueprint or that imprint of trauma. So as soon as the person who's in the ceremony can recognize that, then it is already transcended. It just is. And in the space of this container, connecting using cacao is this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful medicine to open up the heart. The healing naturally occurs and takes place. So that has to do with some body work. I use some beautiful rain sticks and do some sound healing, as well as take them on a journey.
Very
Beg your pardon?
No, I was saying that's very interesting. Sorry, carry on. I was like, I said it very softly. I didn't think you could hear me.
So that is in a one-on-one session. And then within a group session, so these are my favorite because it's such a beautiful opportunity to play. So it started off with when I lived in Australia, there is an incredible woman. I don't know if, I'm sure you guys know her. I mean, she was like my first intro into the whole moon world. Tanishq, the moon woman.
No, I've never seen. I must have a look.
Please look. So, I mean, she's like the most oldest woman that teaches us about the moon. I mean, when I first went onto Facebook, I mean, how old was I? Like 18 years old, and started exploring the stuff. There was just Tanishq, the moon woman, everywhere. And luckily enough, I was living in Sydney, and she's just written this incredible book. She writes some really, really deep, profound stuff. And I went to go to her book launch, and whilst I was in the book launch there, it came up to half time, and she said, I'm going to be giving a whole bunch of gifts away. So she gave a whole bunch of gifts away. And then the last gift, she said, so this gift is divinely chosen. So the person who gets this, it's a part of your life. And I mean, I went to her book talk, and it was the first time that I'd heard about the yoni and the red taint and like women bleeding into the earth. And my eyes nearly fell out of their eye sockets. I was like, what is this woman talking about? This is just so wild. And so she said, right, so the next gift is for a 6-month training with me to do red taint training. And something inside of me was like, I don't even know what that is, but like, I just thought, Lisa, manifest it, and being a manifester in human design, which I didn't know back then, but I was like, okay, cool. You know how to feel this in your body and then just let it go. And that happened. And I was just like, you know what? Non-attachment. If it's not meant to be you, it's not meant to be you. And she picked up this number, and she was like, number 30, Lisa Davis. And I was like, and I burst into tears in front of all of these random women. And they were like, are you okay? And I was like, oh, I don't know what this is, but I just feel such a calling to this.
That's amazing.
I did this beautiful training with her. And then when I got back to South Africa, from all of my past shamanic training and all of these beautiful teachers that had taught me, I thought to myself, I'm just going to start holding these spaces. So these spaces can be anything from, it all depends. I never plan anything. So it all depends on what is coming into the space with regards to other people. And what's so beautiful is that none of this is about me. The words that I speak, who I am, I simply am just a vessel. Mm-hmm. And it's like my commitment is to God. My commitment is to do the work of spirit. And this is the beautiful thing, is it's because when we can step into that space to know it's not about us, that we are co-creating this space where everybody's energy, everybody's transmission is just coming through me as a messenger. And what is coming through me is what they need to experience for themselves to witness or to shift. So this can be through dance, movement, breath work, meditation, journeying, sacred rage, whatever's being called for in that space. And the funnest part of it is creating this journey, finding the perfect piece of music and, really allowing things to change as and when they need to. And that's the beautiful thing about my training is shamanic. So it's about reading the field to see and to tap into people's pain, their trauma, their body, what they need. That is the tools that allows us to access this greater awareness and to be a clearer channel. And the most important thing as any space holder is that we have gone to those deep places ourselves. We can read as many books as we want to. Knowledge is nothing without true integrity of experience and transmission. Mm-hmm. And that's why to train underneath, teachers, shamanic people with a lineage is so incredibly important, because we have to have been able to have gone through the experience in order for others to feel the transmission. Mm-hmm. And that's why when we go into spaces, we'll feel if a facilitator has been there. It's like I sit all day, every day, doing really deep shadow work, constantly being in the process of ceremonies within myself, because it doesn't matter how many books I've read. Only if I've truly integrated this work and walked through the fire myself, can I then hold the space to take other people to those really deep and many times dark places. Mm-hmm. So I'm definitely a lover of the dark.
You are definitely not scared of the dark.
Definitely not.
I love that. I mean, I always say you can read as many cookbooks as you want, but until you actually physically cook the food, you don't actually know what you're talking about. You don't have the experience. So I think it's so important that you brought that point up, because I also think in this time where so many coaches and leaders are emerging in the industry, it's so hard to be able to know which ones actually have the experience to hold space and help people on their journey. So I love that you brought up that point, because I think it's so important to actually have the experience before you take other people on these deep and dark journeys, like you said.
And I love that you guys use the word experience, because that's what I was actually going to speak to you about. And it's not in the sense of what experience do you have that makes you qualified to do what you do, but what would you say was one of your greatest experiences throughout your training? I know you've lived around the world and traveled, but what would you say is one of your greatest experiences?
Sure. So I did my medicine wheel training with the little grandmother, Kesha Crowthorne. She is an incredible woman. So she grew up in a Mormon community, and what happened was she ended up, living through a life as a child of abuse. Mm-hmm. And she actually ran away and went to go and live in the forests. And at around about the age of 15, she got a phone call from one of the tribes within the Amazon. He actually contacted her and he said, we've been watching you live in this forest. So she lived with 16 Amazonian tribes around the world. And I mean, her stories and what she had to share, it was just absolutely mesmerizing. Really mesmerizing. So I did my medicine wheel training with her, and it was so beautiful because it's unlike any other medicine wheel training that there is out there. You get a lot of trains of thought of your traditional medicine wheel of, east being air, south being water, and all of these different parts. But her transmissions of the teachings that she shared with me were so different. And it's been interesting because often in ceremonial spaces, I'll feel sometimes I'll have to say to everybody this isn't the traditional medicine wheel. And then I feel this doubt coming up in me, but I'm hold on a second. What is your truth? What is your truth? Because these are technologies, right? So essentially what these things are that we are learning are technologies in order to work with energies. And, that's why it's so incredibly important to learn these from a particular lineage or space. It's because you get those transmissions, like Alberto Vindaloo from the Four Winds School. He is just the most phenomenal man. So his would be the more traditional medicine wheel teachings. But what was so beautiful is it's like when I tap into my truth of that experience with the little grandmother, those teachings and the transmission that I received from her are truth for me. And the most beautiful thing is it's like, so often you'll go into a ceremony space where people will read the traditional open the winds to the east, and they get a placard, and that's beautiful. I'm not here to say anything is right or wrong. It's not at all. But what's so amazing about the training that I received was that opening space is a prayer, and how to tap into yourself to really open yourself up to spirit, to see what needs to come through you for that particular group, for that particular transmission. So if you had to ask me what is one of my favorite things, I definitely have to say that by far, in terms of one of the teachings that I've learned. And then my amazing guru in India, my meditation guru, who he was this short little funny man. He was so sweet, and nothing was ever wrong with him. And I was always like, Master, why are you always so happy? And he was like, because Lisa, every time something comes up, I just notice that it's the ego, and then it dissolves. You must just dissolve your ego. And I was like, what does he mean by this? So it's been really beautiful along the way to meet so many beautiful, my teachers are definitely for me, the best thing.
That's so beautiful. And I love that you brought up that feeling you had when you always feel like you need to explain that you're not doing the traditional medicine wheel and all of that, because that goes back to, I think, what makes us all so special and unique, and why there is no competition. It's when you take everything that you've learned and you channel and you go within and you find the wisdom of your soul, and you use that unique, secret, I always call it your secret sauce, to teach, because you can regurgitate stuff that you've learned and stuff that you've read, but when you actually fully understand it in your own way and teach it that way, that's how you attract the clients that are going to be attracted to the way that you teach, which means there is no competition, because everyone does everything so differently, and your client's going to be attracted to you because of the way that you come across and the way that you teach and the way that they hear you. So I love that you brought that up, because I think that's one of the cures as well to recognizing and realizing that we are all unique and there is no competition. And that's why we should all collaborate, because we can learn from each other, and we can also recommend each other to people if we don't gel with a specific person.
Rox, I really love that. First of all, I love your little secret sauce. That's really awesome. Really great.
Thank you.
And yes, it's so true. You will be able to feel when we trust in ourselves. And I think what is happening in the world right now is that we are going to get to a point, because things are about to get really heavy in the world. And the reason why we're moving through this right now is because human beings are being asked to begin to trust their inner guidance and their inner knowing more. And this is how this big awakening is going to take place. But that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. But we will see, right? It's like when you go into a space and this isn't wrong either, because everybody is in a different space and a different time. But it's like if you go into a space and the facilitator or the space holder is holding notes, right? And it's like, how much of that information have they actually embodied? Because we can't, information isn't just there. There's a very big difference between knowledge and wisdom, and wisdom is embodied knowledge that you've actually lived through these experiences. And if that is truth, then it's like, why would one need to be reading up on the notes? Because the beautiful thing is that it comes through as this embodied transmission. And Rox, I love what you say, because there's there's some things that I'm not good at, and there's some things that are just not my medicine. So it's all about being like, it's so beautiful. And this is the beautiful thing, right? If we all got into a space where it's like, okay, cool. Like one of my really favorite things that I'm really deeply passionate about is shadow work, and being able to people to really deeply go into their trauma, because I've spent so much of my life healing my trauma. And that all comes from what happened to us, right? Like what our stories are, what our upbringing is, you know, our wounds and our pain are our gifts. So some people just have particular wounds and particular pains that they can then turn into this gift and this transmission. And others didn't go through that experience, you know? So it's like, if we each had to see ourselves for our beautiful gifts and get out of that competitive mindset, because let's be honest, right? There's not just a few thousands of people who need help. There are like millions of people in the world who need help.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing is that as healers, as space holders, that we have integrity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that we are doing the work each and every single day, that we are taking that knowledge, turning it into wisdom through lived experiences. And the most important thing is to realize that this is not actually about us.
Mm-hmm.
This has got nothing to do with In Aligned with Roxy or Lisa LifeTrain. Like, it's got nothing to do with us. It simply has to do with how we can be of service to humanity.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
It's as simple as that, you know?
And I love that when you were talking about your shadow work, and that's something that you're super passionate about. Like, we obviously know what shadow work is, but for people that are listening and are interested in maybe like trying out shadow work, what would you describe it as? What would be the experience? I mean, you know, for whoever wants to try it out.
Beautiful, amazing. So I truly believe if there was one tool that was the scariest tool, but the most empowering tool that we can use as human beings, that would be shadow work. Mm-hmm. And what's so interesting is that we are so conditioned as human beings since we're little children to be afraid of the dark. Mm-hmm. Don't go in the dark. Don't look under your bed. That's where the boogeyman sits. You know, it's like we have been conditioned to believe that there is light and there is dark, there is heaven and there is hell, and you must always, always stay in the light. Mm-hmm. But what we don't realize is that in the darkness is where there is silence, there is stillness. In the darkness is where babies are born inside of the womb. It's dark inside there. Where seeds are planted into the soil, it's dark inside of there. So, and I believe that the reason why we're told to be afraid of the dark is because the powers that be, if each and every single one of us had to do deep shadow work, we would step into our wholeness and our power. And an entire world that has done their shadow work and they're all lit up and they've brought those shadow parts to the light, there would be no systems, you know, because there would be nothing. We would not need that external mirror of the collective unconscious, right? The collective unconscious shadow, which is being so brought up and shown to us at this time. So for those of you who don't know what shadow work is, I'd like you to think of yourself as a human being when you are born into the world, that you are everything. This is an experience of duality and polarity. We are light, we are dark, we are love, we are hate, we are fear, we are anger, we are lust, we are greed, we are all of these emotions, all of these experiences of the human being. But what happens as a child when there's only a certain part of our brain that's developed, you know, we haven't developed the hypothalamus, which is the storytelling narrative. What happens as a child when we are developing that ego sense of self of, I need to be and act like this in order to be loved, because our survival and our acceptance into the tribe is the utmost importance. Our survival depends on it, on being seen, witnessed, and loved, accepted by the tribe. So as we're growing up as these little children and things happen in our external environment, with our parents, with our teachers, that brings us a deep sense of pain, of shame, of not being accepted. What we can do, and I can give you this visualization, it's like we are this beautiful house this beautiful glass house, this tender, vulnerable, beautiful human being experience house. And each one of these emotions are represented by a room in the house. And what happens as a young child, when we only have that amygdala, when we're developing our ego, fight, flight, or freeze response, and something happens in our external environment to make us feel unloved, ashamed of ourselves. Whatever emotional experience is connected to that feeling, what we do is we then take that thing that if I was this way, my mother called me disgusting, or don't be too loud, or, you're a bad, naughty girl. And we take those feelings and we put them in a little box and we throw them into that room and we lock the key. And we spend our entire life like these little princes and princesses, being so perfect to society, walking around the glass house, being like, yes, I'm my authentic self. And what happens is the goal, there's no goal really. Everyone's obtaining enlightenment. There's no such thing as an end place. When you obtain that thing, you move on to the next space. We just simply are. But what happens as a human being is through these experiences, we get to start witnessing ourselves from different perspectives. And every person, every situation that comes into our life shows us a different aspect of ourselves. And the beautiful thing about the shadow is that it's designed to be reintegrated into our consciousness, so that once we are whole, then our lessons are done and we can move on to the next space. So what's so beautiful about the shadow is each and every single moment, those unintegrated parts of ourselves are being projected back to us as this reflection of the things that make us feel uncomfortable, the people that trigger us. So this essentially is what shadow work is. It's about being able to go into those dark places where this shadow is trapped in your subconscious mind. And that's why it's really hard to access. So this is why I believe, unless it's like you've done a lot of shadow work with coaches before, it's very hard to access that part of the mind by yourself. Mm-hmm. So the beautiful thing about a coach, especially a shadow work coach, is that they can, by you speaking to them, they can access your shadow and see how it's playing out. And the coach, the job, the role of a coach, of a shadow work coach, is to not point out the shadow, to go, oh, look, there you've got some shame. Shame, what did I do to you, It's merely to be a mirror and to use the tools to help them access the unconscious, the subconscious mind, where the trauma sits inside of the body. And then, so I've created this beautiful tool called trauma timeline tracking, where essentially I will use shamanic processes and technologies to help the individual access that trauma and to rewrite the story of what happened. So it, through neuroplasticity, reprograms the mind and the brain in a very a tangible way. So, this is the beautiful thing, because so often our gifts is connected deeply to our traumas. So for example, I grew up in an abusive household. So for me, I was really, really, really sensitive. And this sensitivity, as well as a little girl, this is why I ended up doing bodybuilding. I was reading a magazine with my father, who I didn't speak to for 15 years. And he was looking through the bodybuilding magazine, telling me how beautiful all the women looked. And for 25 years, I spent my entire life unconsciously building these muscles to try and get this love from my father. And it ended up I was training to do half Iron Woman and training to do the bodybuilding competition that Roxy and I did together. And I was in a really bad emotionally abusive relationship, and I couldn't get out of this relationship. And what happened was that this stored stuck energy in my back ended up me not being able to walk most days for 6 months. And I had to sit and I had to work deeply through this trauma and this pain of these blueprints and these imprints coming up. But through that, it was a gift, because now I'm able to help other people access their shadows, to discover what is causing them disconnect. And it's all about giving themselves the opportunity and space to witness and to bring that beautiful thing to the light. And it's like, through the abuse as a child and all these things, now I've gained access through those. I'll give you an example. So at one stage I was like, no, I'm going to save the world. Like, this is what I'm going to do. So I said, I'm going to create an 8-week course, and it's going to be all about self-love, and we're going to save the world. So I said, cool, you've got to try the test out on yourself first. So one of the things was like random acts of kindness. So I woke up one day and I was like, cool, I'm going to do my random acts of kindness today. So I drove around the streets, like looking for someone to help. And there was a guy with all of his rubbish, one of the waste pickers, and it blew all over the road. So I like pulled over to the side of the car, and I was going to go and help him start picking up his litter. And there were all these cars behind me hooting at me. And I was like, no, okay. Next one. What other stranger needs some help? So I arrived at the Woolworths, and it just so happened that this woman was being carried out by these men. Something had happened to her back, and she collapsed on the floor. And I was like, yes, there she is. Da-na-na-na-na, CrossFit Lisa. I can pick that woman up. Here's my stranger I'm going to help. So I picked this woman up with these 2 security guards, and I walked her to her car. And her daughter turned around and thanked everybody else except for me. And I was like, what about me? Like, hello, like those were my muscles that lifted you up, And I got home and I was like, oh, hey, girl, you are feeling deeply triggered. And this is how we access our shadow. It's in those trigger points. And I call it sitting in your icky sticky, sitting in your shit. So I literally, whenever something triggers me, I get down there on my mat and I'm like, girl, you are going to see this. And then I do my processes and access all these things. And one of the beautiful things, Rox, I also know you love this, but it's using cards, because they really help us get these clear messages from spirit. So this card was the hero card. Why are you trying to be the hero? What part of you feels guilty or ashamed for something that you did in the past? And my whole body went into contraction, and I was like, oh my God, this is so hectic. What is this about? So I took myself into a deep shadow work process, and there were all these memories that I had blocked out as a young girl between the ages of 10 and 14 of me being extremely abusive to friends. I locked a friend in the fridge. I used to go to movies. I mean, I did the most atrocious things. I would go to movies. Guys, I can't even believe I'm saying this, right? But this is how you guys, you share the things.
Safe space.
And I would chew up all this popcorn, and then I'd just be like shoot the popcorn at her. I mean, it's so bad. I did things like made my best friend quit ballet because ballet was for stupid girls. And I would say the most horrible things. And I sat there and my whole body went into contraction. And I realized that the reason why I was wanting to be the hero was because of the shame that I had carried as a young child of being abusive to my friends, because growing up in an abusive household, that's all that I knew. I didn't know any other way. And what then happened was all of that shame was buried so deep inside of me that I started to wear this mask of, I'm going to save the world and be the hero. But the truth about that is that's inauthentic. It's not real. It's like there is this unconscious agenda of my ego at play here. And this is why it's just continuing to be like, okay, cool. Like coming back to the space of who am I? What am I? Why am I doing the things that I do? Strip yourself bare and just keep on coming back to just your truth in love. Your truth in love.
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's so important for people to do shadow work, but it's obviously, I think, one of the things that people avoid the most, because, I mean, just the name of shadow work is scary in itself. And a lot of people aren't ready to face like these deep, dark parts of themselves. But I think there's also such a huge I want to say misconception, but maybe also a mindset that people have, that like facing these parts of themselves is like not what they want to do, because there is like fear, guilt, shame, all these horrible low vibrational emotions that you have to face and go through in order to do the shadow work. But it's something that's so necessary, because, and also I think people think that it's parts of themselves they have to hide away and that they have to feel shameful for, when it's actually all about accepting that part of you, integrating it into yourself and learning from that. And I mean, like you're saying, you have the most profound realizations when you go back to these parts of yourself, or these memories that you have of what you did or how you were, that bring on the most transformation and shifts and change, because you're no longer operating from the ego because you're trying to make up for what you might have done in the past. You are stepping into love, you're stepping into your soul and doing things authentically. And that just makes life so much easier, so much more enjoyable, so much more real, instead of, like you say, with the ego, just putting on this mask every day and doing what you think you need to do and what you think everyone else wants you to do. So I think it's just so important for our listeners, especially, to maybe think about doing some shadow work, because it'll change your life.
100%. And I was also going to say, like, as Lisa was speaking about earlier with your competition stage and like how you got the pain in your back, there's so many people that are so disconnected, and we speak about it all the time, like people that are just completely still in a box. And I know so many people personally that just don't believe that trauma can be carried physically through your body. And if there's something wrong with your stomach, you need medication because it's a medical thing. It's not that you could be carrying trauma in your stomach or carrying anxiety, or some people feel that that feeling of anxiety is a stomach issue. Like, people don't even want to believe that it's anxiety. People are so deep rooted in their belief that everything that is physical is separate and like is medicinal, basically, but not the medicinal side of things the way we speak about it. Everything, I think in the last however many years, the fine line between Western and Eastern when it comes to medicine and dividing the body from mind and physical and soul has happened so hectically over the last few years that people literally believe that every part of them that is hurting is because of something medical, like they've got a tumor or something. Like, you could literally go onto Google and be like, oh my God, I'm actually dying tomorrow. Meanwhile, like, can we just try and work through the traumas that people are going through, and maybe you won't feel like you're dying. Like, you could have someone to work through the issues with you instead of Google. So
that and B, that's so true, because it's like, that's the one access point, that and our moon time as a woman. We get to literally drink our own cup of ayahuasca every month. It's amazing. But it's like the trauma, same as the shadow work, is the access point or the key to really understand what is going on inside of us. I love it whenever someone says like, I have a sore shoulder, like, I know I shouldn't, but I always just take a picture. There's the most amazing book by a man called Jacques Michel. He's German. You can only buy it in Germany. I had to get someone to bring it for me. And basically I'm like, okay, cool. Let's see what this is about. And my favorite thing was, sending this to people, and people, I always see their faces when they read it. They're like, yeah. And then I see their eyes going bigger, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, you see there's some truth there. But the truth about the truth is that so many people are not ready to hear it. Because that would mean that they would have to then go and deal with their traumas and their shame and their pain and all of the energetics around that dis-ease or sickness in the body. And that's the scary part, right? Because it's like, we're so attached to our identity. So who would we be without this pain? Who would we be without these stories? Because it's much easier to live in this identity story than to realize that we actually are nothing. We have no identity. It's like we are trained and conditioned as a child. As soon as you come out of the womb, it's like, your name is Roxy, and it's like, this is who you are. And it's already starting that identification separation process. Your gender, your color, all of these different aspects of ourselves. So we are conditioned to believe that we are other to everything. Whereas we are actually just just one. And it's one in all the sense of one. You and I are one. You know, you are a divine expression of God. You are a divine expression of me. We are simply all just collective consciousness. And it's the same thing as the body. It's when we can begin to understand that this body, this vessel for us, is showing us that we are one with the body. We are one with the spirit. You know, the Native Americans say it's so beautiful that when there is disease or sickness in the body, that a piece of our soul shatters off. So all of our traumas have literally shattered within the field. So what we're doing is we're walking around with our soul shattered and obliterated from our pains and our traumas in this field. So we walk around as like half humans or like quarter humans. Whereas when we do this work, what we're doing, it's so beautiful, is that we're going to go and find those little pieces of our soul and we're bringing them back to ourselves so that we can become whole. And when we become whole, we realize we have no identity, that we are nothingness. And that is the stillness that we get to experience and be. And that is the soul.
I love that you speak about that, because I was just thinking now, it's so important for people to realize that are listening. And if this is the first time you're hearing about shadow work and you are interested about going further with it, it's important to realize that, like we were speaking about, like Lisa was saying, with rewriting the story. So as you said, like we identify with all of these stories. And if we don't have these stories, then who are we or what are we? And by no means is shadow work telling you that you have to forget all of these things, or working with someone is not going to make you forget all of these things that happen to you. It's just rewriting those stories and rewriting those memories so that the shadow work is easier for you and you are able to step into your higher self. So by no means is shadow work going to erase your mind of everything bad that's ever happened to you. It's just going to help you rewrite those stories so that you're able to live your best life, basically. Short.
Yeah, girl, live your best.
Live your best life.
Yeah, I think it just helps to reframe your perception on the memories. Like instead of feeling that guilt, shame, fear, anger, whatever it may be, like fully accepting that and now viewing it with love. Because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to be love, to do everything with love from the heart. I think the world would be a much better place.
Yeah. You can only hope and dream.
That is the dream.
Exactly.
That was really interesting. Like I would think a lot of people would want to touch more into shadow work. And if you don't, then I have no words.
Yeah. And I also think like, it's funny that you brought up something I wanted to bring up, but obviously I always forget half the stuff I want to ask as we're chatting, was the pains in the body. Because I think, like we were saying, people are so disassociated from their bodies. I always say we are like literally work from the head up. Nothing else works down here. And that's why working with life coaches or just doing the work helps you to reconnect to everything below your brain. And it is so interesting because a lot of people do not believe that the disease we carry within our body is mostly 99 to 100% of the time caused from traumas or shadows that we are keeping so deep within us that we haven't focused, that it's just manifesting into this disease in our body. And I think if people could really recognize this, it would be so nice, because we wouldn't be relying on this Western medicine bullshit and actually doing work that helps us without destroying the body with foreign chemicals and foreign weird shit that we don't even know what's in half the stuff that we're putting into our bodies. So I love that point.
Rox, that's such a big one, because our bodies are a mirror reflection of the earth. So, you know, the stones and the rocks are the bones in our body. This is where we hold our genetic code. And the veins inside of our body, our blood, are a mirror reflection of the rivers, you know. And it's like the reason why the world is such a mess, and the reason why this collective unconscious that is being brought to the surface through what's happening in the world, our leaders, you know, this virus that has become manifest, essentially what it's showing us is this mirror reflection of our inability to connect to our own earthly body and to heal our own earthly body. So I was fortunate enough, I had booked a San Pedro retreat, and I got COVID just before. So I got out of quarantine on the Tuesday and I went and drank San Pedro on the Thursday.
Oh my God.
So the virus was very much alive in my body. And what was so profound is that I got to have a conversation with this virus, like, why are you here? Why have you been made manifest? And, the virus said to me, I mean, if people have never done plant medicine, they're probably going to think I'm crazy. He was talking to Corona. Yeah, dude. Good.
That's hilarious.
I was having a conversation, and basically what the virus said to me was that it simply is a manifestation of the state of our own internal being, with our connection with the earth. It's like, there is a reason why things like, Shell and all of those things are happening, because it's literally like we're still being shown the patriarchal state that we're living in as we move into this transitional state of the back to a matriarchal society after 6,000 years, how much we are still raping the mother, raping our bodies. And, everybody goes, yeah, but that's not our issue. Like, that's not our fault. Like, that's Shell's problem, or like, that's some external problem out there. But what people don't realize is that this is not going to shift any of this, including the virus, because we are the virus, including the raping and pillaging of women, because we rape and pillage ourselves, including all of these things there's so much chaos and disconnect. And none of these things are going to be able to shift, because everything's a vibration, unless we are, each and every single one of us, in our own capacity, taking responsibility for our own traumas and our own pains. I went away to Paris, and I was sitting on the side of the riverbank, and I was like, this river's so beautiful. Can we go and swim in it? And the guy who was running the house said, no. That water is way too polluted. I was like, hold on a second here. I'm sorry. And I tapped into, I'd taken a little bit of mushrooms. I tapped into the speaking. Now people are going to think I'm even more crazy, to the river, to the waters of the earth. And the waters of the earth, which are the veins, the blood, it's like the blood of the earth, was like, I'm so sick. I'm so poisoned. So the fact that we can't, even as human beings, take care of our own water supplies, because the institutions that are in power, says so much about the state of our world. But I said to myself, Lisa, you can't take this and put this on someone else. So how do we, in our own personal capacity, play our role, play our part? And that is by coming back to our own earthly body. What are we putting into our bodies? What is our gut system like? How are we treating our own blood? Do we have sacred reverence for this earth? Do we have these beautiful sacred practices? And it's really sad because, our indigenous tribes are dying out. And if our indigenous tribes die out, this world will die out. And that is the plan, as these powers that be are fighting for their last bit of control. It's like, put the Aboriginals into concentration camps and, take all of burn down the Amazon. This past year, in the last 15 years, it is the highest rate of deforestation that we've ever had. And this is what is being mirrored back to us, is that we are the virus. We are very, very sick. But the healing, no one's coming to save us. No man is going to come down from heaven going, sha-la-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la-la, and everything's healed. Like, we have to do the work. We have to hold ourselves responsible and take accountability for how we show up in our own healing and integration process each and every single day. And as we do that, there'll be a shift in consciousness. That's how we will begin to create new worlds.
I love that analogy. That was a really cool way of looking at it.
Yeah. I think me and hubby always joke, like, it'd be so nice if we could just spike all the people in power with a little bit of mushrooms or acid or something. So they can have their own little like ego death trip. But I love what you said there, because I think it is so imperative that each soul on this earth needs to take a deep look within themselves and just make the changes for themselves, because I think that's what happens. We look at everything that's going on in the world and they're like, there's so much shit. How can me as one person change all of this? But it's not that I need to change everything. It's that we all need to change a little bit in order to make a huge impact. It's more of the like quantity over quality kind of thing, where like if we all just sat, went within, did a little bit of shadow work, did a little bit of like separating from the ego and living more from the soul, the world would immediately be a way, way better place. And we would start to actually stop raping and pillaging the earth, raping and pillaging each other, like just having complete disregard for everything, because unfortunately most of the world is run by ego and power and greed and control and all these negative, low vibrating things that's never going to bring any happiness until each person as an individual is like, you know what, I'm going to change myself, hopefully spread a little bit of light to the people around me, and it can just become a domino effect.
Rox, you know, what you say there is so vital, because the ironic thing of all of this is that all of us coaches, healers, teachers, we cannot actually save or help anybody. The only thing we can do is save and help ourselves. I just went on a women's retreat with 60 women with 5 very powerful crones. And there is an incredible tantrika named Mrs. Love, Valentina Leo. She's incredible. And I put up my hand to ask the question. I said, you know, out of curiosity, if us women are doing such deep work on ourselves, how is that impacting the masculine? Because there's not as many spaces for men to process these things. And she looked at me with her beautiful dress and her breasts, and she's just the most sexy fabulous woman. And she says, in her Italian accent, not that my Italian accent is very good, but she's like, who are you to be so arrogant? And in front of 60 women, I was like, is she talking to me? She's like, who do you think you are to be so arrogant? You're not here to help the men.
Yeah.
You are here to help nobody. And I was like, oh God. And she was like, you are here to help nobody. You are here to only help yourself live this life. There is nothing that you can do to save anybody. And I swear I had a small ego death right in that moment. I was like, oh my God, okay, it clicks. There is nothing that we can do. You know, it's like, that's back to the ego, right? It's like, I am the coach, I am the healer, I am the space holder. And that's why I don't like these labels, because it's irrelevant, because the most important person is ourselves. And when we work on ourselves, we become whole. And as we become whole, our transmission and our frequency changes. And it doesn't matter who you are, whether you are a coach, whether you are a healer, whether you are the barista at a coffee shop. If you have done work on yourself, you are a walking, living, breathing, integrated human being that is coming from a place of love and the soul in your interactions with the world. So everybody is a healer. Everybody is a shaman. We all have that ability, but it's not about others. It's always about healing the self and doing what you can do for yourself. And that is it. And you know, the funny thing is, it was so beautiful. I ran this yoga festival, and there was this incredible man. He was so conscious. He was like a walking Jesus Christ. I swear, he had such beautiful Christ energy. It was so beautiful. And we were sitting around the dinner table, and he says, you know, Lisa, so as human beings, we do this thing, right? We have all of these books and we study shadow work and psychology and all of these things. And it's like, they are frameworks of how to better understand this human experience, right? And he was like, there's 2 trains of thought. The first train of thought is that we keep coming back over and over again to relive our karma so that our soul can learn the lessons to become whole. Or the other train of thought is that we simply just exist, and when we die, and there's no such thing as the afterlife. And he was like, if the latter was true, then none of this framework matters. And all that matters is this now moment. And it completely just obliterated everything for me, because all of these things that I've studied and I've learned, and it's all just wisdom and knowledge and framework, it's just once again doing what the ego does, and it's putting labels and things on top of things to give us more identity as a human being, when in actual fact, if we just had to allow ourselves to be present, to be love, this whole world would change. But it's the switch in the mind, and it's this constant checking. Where am I coming from? Where am I operating? The awareness of self and presence.
That's so deep. I actually got goosebumps when you said that.
It's very, very true.
Yeah.
Like on the back of the neck.
I'm like, and I literally just had a wax yesterday.
Thanks for ruining Roxy's wax. Honestly, can you not be any more hectic?
But I love that you brought that up, because I think also, and I think about it all the time, like we get so caught up in like this hunger for knowledge and wisdom and learning the next thing and what is the purpose of life, and like trying to remember our soul's lessons. But also I'm like, we need to just be here in the moment. Like the only moment we have is now. And when you can be fully present, that's a gift within itself, because you're not having like regrets and like all these negative emotions about things that happened in the past, or like anxiety or stress about what's going to happen in the future. None of those things exist anyway. So we're like wasting our time freaking out about the past and the present, where we could just be here right now, enjoying every single second that we have on this earth. So it's like this conflicting, like, should I learn more? Should I be doing this? Should I be chasing for this? Or should I just be here right now, enjoying the moment? Because that really is all that we have. So I love that you brought that up, because like you said, we here with duality, it's polarities. And this is also such a beautiful example of that.
Even with you, I'm like, that's your, yes, being present in the moment is what you want to do. But what makes you happy being present in the moment? Knowledge for you. Like you love to learn. So for you, that is being present, and knowledge makes you happy. Do you know what I mean? Like you like to sit and learn. So being present in the moment for you is still being present when you're learning. So everything is different for everyone. And I love that you were speaking about, I mean, we've spoken about it all the time, but like everyone being a collective. And I think it becomes so, you mentioned shell, and just because that's such a big thing at the moment, like it becomes so overwhelming for us to look at the exterior and be like, what can I do to help all of these big problems? As you said earlier, I want to change the world. Yes, we all want to change the world, but you look to all these external places of how you can change the world and what you can change and what you can do to make these things better. Where, like we said earlier, if you just see yourself as an extension of everybody else, an extension of the earth, an extension of the universe, we are all one. So if you are working on yourself, you are bettering the world, you are bettering the universe, you are bettering people around you, you are changing your frequency, and you will attract things that are better. So the minute you are working on yourself, you will attract those different vibrations, you'll attract those different people, and you will be doing work on yourself that will help people around you, it will help the world. And it sounds so woo-hoo to be like, work on yourself and you'll help the world, but you 100% will help the world, whether you are a monk overseas or you are someone that's sitting and journaling at home. Like as long as you're doing some sort of self-work, it doesn't matter the scale. Like you literally don't have to be in the coaching industry, or you could literally be journaling for 5 minutes in the morning, and that's more than a lot of people are doing. So
last night I went and did a tantric pool float. Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine invited me and I was like, do I have to be naked? And she was like, well, you can wear a costume, but like, you know, it's better to not have a free flow. And I was like, free flow for what? And she's like, well, when people touch you. And I was like, people are going to touch you. And I was like, oh my God, I was so nervous. Because I've always had this perception or this belief that, you know, a lot of the tantra men are just deeply sexually wounded men who just want to, as I said last night, very embarrassingly in front of 18 people, I was like, no, I have this perception that these tantric masters just want to stick their cucumber in my yoni. Everyone was silent. I was like, oh shit, that was a bit awkward. And it was so interesting because, you know, I had to like now in front of these 18 people, like take off my clothes and get naked and go into a swimming pool and go through this whole deep process where they built us up to do this beautiful exercise at the end, which was a group exercise. And I'm not going to tell you about it just in case you do it, you know, so some people might be called to it and then I take the experience away from them. But there was this moment where I felt because the ego is it's not bad. We have to learn how to work with it. And it's like, I felt my ego defense mechanism kick in and going, I'm not safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to say, you are safe. I had to talk myself through that process and to say that you are safe. And being held by that group and that group experience, it brought such deep healing and such beautiful, clear transmissions to me in terms of what it means to feel safe in my own body. And as each one of us come into those group experiences and we shift those things for ourselves, every time I then come into a space, and women will then be able to understand and feel what it feels like to be safe in their body. So it's like this beautiful gift that we get to pass on to one another, through these experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, be open, be excited, have the experiences, go into, group situations with trusted facilitators. And I must say, girls, that we are some of the luckiest human beings in the world. Our medicine women, our facilitators, our healers, our teachers are some of the best practitioners in the entire world. They are powerful, and there's something about being born as an South African woman, because the potency of the transmissions that we hold from the collective trauma in South Africa is very powerful. Mm-hmm. So we're in a good place.
I love that. And I love that you said be open, because I think that's like the best way for you to firstly obviously learn new perspectives, new knowledge, new things, but also to learn to separate yourself from your ego and this group ego that we have, because we're all so stuck in these rigid thoughts, ideas of how things should be, because obviously we have all this conditioning. And when you're open to new things, to new experiences, to new people, those for me I always find are the best learning experiences, because you are seeing new perspective, you're learning new things, you're opening your mind to new ways of thinking, and that's inevitably going to lead to the most growth possible. Mm-hmm. So I love that you said be open. Just thought I'd pop that in there. Be open, guys. Try new things. Be a yes man. Yes, woman.
Yeah. We talk about that all the time. We're like, be a yes man, but not to everything, but be a yes man.
Beautiful.
That was honestly such a great conversation. Do you have anything else you want to ask?
No, that was incredible. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was a really beautiful experience. And I think if any of you guys have any questions, Lisa's Instagram is LifeTrain, right?
LifeTrain.
LifeTrain. I was like, please don't let me say that wrong. It is LifeTrain. So if you guys want to follow her on Instagram, you can follow her and pop her a message, pop her questions, join the ceremonies, whatever you guys want to do. And then
I think I just want to say, because this was quite a dark opening into shadow work, not dark, but speaking about shadow work. Might have scared a few people off, but I think the closing statement there, to be open, is an invitation for you guys to really just experiment with it, whether it's journaling on a shadow work question, or going and finding a coach that is specialized in this, like Lisa, and just trying it. Because the worst thing that can happen is you're like, no, this is too much for me, and you go on and do something else. But the best thing that can happen is that it liberates you and teaches you. So just don't be afraid of the dark. Go and spend a little bit of time there, and I promise you it'll help you to see the light in a completely new way, I think.
I think that's the name of this podcast, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
That's
the name of this episode, Don't Be Scared of the Dark.
Beautiful. Girls, thank you so much for having me. It was such an honor to be on your podcast.
Of course. Thank you for chatting to us and taking the time. We really appreciate it. And these are always such special spaces and conversations that happen. So if you guys have learned anything or taken something away from this podcast, also let us know. And yeah, we'll speak to you guys next week.